forgive me now. I'm going to go through some of this somewhat quickly. Just a reminder again, as far as kind of protocol for today's session, the first chunk will be mostly presentation on my part. We have all of you muted. If you would like to ask questions, you have 2 ways you can do that. One, you can post a question in the chat function, and that will come into us. Otherwise, if you are on a telephone, you can raise your hand if you need to ask a question, or we will open the line periodically to see if anyone has any questions as well. After we complete this webinar today, I'm hoping for some individual conversations with campuses who are really interested in this. Between this webinar and our next one in September, which will be a duplicate of this, we have 19 campuses who have expressed at least some level of interest in this Connect2Complete program. We were hoping to get 5 to 10 to start, so I know a lot of you are just gathering more information right now. We'll talk a little bit later in the webinar about the timeline, but we are going to have to move fairly quickly in getting commitments from campuses so that we can move ahead with our planning and be ready for a fall 2016 launch. You should have received, and they're available also in the webinar, 3 resources that supplement the PowerPoint that we'll be walking through. One is an overview of the peer advocate roles, and we'll talk about the peer advocates in a few minutes. The second is Essentials and Program Design for the Post-Pilot Phase, and this is post-pilot of the national program. And then there's an overview of the Connect2Complete model that has a lot of graphics with little gummy dudes and stuff in it that kind of shows you the theory of change and the assumptions and the impact so far. So we will start at the beginning here with the next slide on the webinar. Our goals for today really are 3. One is share the key elements of Connect2Complete. It is a national model. It's been piloted now in 4 states. It's been evaluated. It's got some really great impact, so we're excited to bring it to Michigan. The second piece of it is to talk about what we think this might look like in Michigan. Originally, Connect2Complete was designed for 2-year campuses, but we see a lot of benefit and a lot of interest for our 4-year campuses as well. And then again, at the end, we're hoping to identify campuses that will participate in our pilot. There's several reasons why Michigan Campus Compact is interested in this program, but mainly it's because we've seen the real solid connection between service learning and civic engagement on college student retention and success. There's a lot of work going on in the state among our partner organizations related to college access, and we love that, and we champion them, and we celebrate them, and we love to partner with them. And we kind of figure that with so many people working to get folks to campus, we'd like to get in on the other end of making sure they graduate. Once they get there, let's keep them there. We know many of our campuses already have a variety of programs that are designed for success and completion. And we think that Connect2Complete can enhance their work and help really advance their goals and their efforts as well. So the next slide is just for those who are new to Michigan Campus Compact, and just an overview of who we are and why we're involved in this work. So if you'd like to visit our website, you can get more information. We are a statewide association. We have 37 members, 2-year and 4-year public and private, who are focused on civic engagement, service learning for students. And we work with individuals at all levels of a campus. The presidents come in as they make the commitment for their campus, and then we work with faculty, staff, and students to advance our goals. Our conversation moving forward, go to the next slide. Thank you. Our conversation is really focused around several conversations that we've had over the past year. Many of our campuses have been really focused on retention and success in college access. We hear all the reports about the brain drain from Michigan and the shifting demographics and decreases in student enrollment, and you can see a new report every day. And we really want to support our campuses in meeting their goals and supporting their students. At the national level, Campus Compact has identified 4 national priorities with which we align our programs and services. And you'll see those there. They're focused around meaningful community partnerships, college access and retention, enhancing college readiness and K-12 education, which we really leave to our friends at MCAN and their partners, and we support them again in that work, but then better preparing college students for their careers in society. You know, this is our opportunity, again, with the nature in Michigan of being a collaborative state, for us to pull in additional partners who can work in this field with us. So Connect2Complete, again, is a national model. It's about 5 years old now. It's a model for integrating service learning and peer advocacy into developmental education courses. That's the way it was originally designed. And as I mentioned, with the trends in higher education, not all of our campuses have developmental education courses anymore, but we are looking for courses that are targeted towards the first-gen students who are coming in with some level of risk for not completing their degree. Typically, they're described as the Pell-eligible student or economically and socially disadvantaged, but you will define that population on your campus. When Campus Compact nationally started this, it was piloted in 3 states with the support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That grant has now expired, but there are many states that are really happy, including Michigan, to be able to glean from the lessons learned and the evaluation and all the resources that were developed to be able to bring this program to bear. In our conversations in Michigan about, you know, do we or do we not follow this national model, we've been involved with conversations with a number of partners. So the Michigan Nonprofit Association, the Michigan College Access Network, the Michigan Community College Association, and the King-Chavez-Parks Initiative at Workforce Development have all been involved so far and are very supportive of this model. And we expect that as we continue to implement it throughout Michigan, we'll see additional partners come to the table. All right, so if you need more information about this and how it ties together, sorry, we just had a really weird mishap here in the office. You can go to the National Campus Compact website. As some of you know, if you've been members of Michigan Campus Compact for the last couple of years, we've been working around college-positive volunteerism and developed a great model and have shared it throughout the state and nationally. And about a year ago, National Campus Compact adopted college-positive volunteerism to really take the lead on that nationally. And what they have done is partnered the college-positive volunteerism resources with the Connect2Complete resources in providing broad range supports for students. So this is the link that you'll see here. If you go to compact.org, if you happen to lose this link, if you just type in the search box Connect2Complete, you'll get a whole host of resources that are available. The pilot, again, involved 9 community colleges in Florida, Ohio, and Washington. And there were 3 campuses in each. And again, if you go to the national website, you can see samples from each of these campuses, see their stories, their lessons learned, see the diversity with which they implemented the model. The program itself engaged more than 4,500 students in the program, really focusing again on the peer-to-peer advocacy and peer-assisted community engaged learning. What has come out of this pilot, and then also the work that was done in Oregon following the pilot, is that these 2 elements combined are the secret sauce. So involving the peer advocates in the classroom and having the peer advocates really develop service learning or other community engaged learning methodology for that classroom is really critical. And those are 2 of the key components that we'll talk about in just a second that you have to commit to if you're going to be a Connect2Complete campus. We've had, again, a lot of discussions about Connect2Complete and what it is and what it isn't, and looking at the different models that are already implemented on campuses throughout the state. And I liken this a little bit to kind of a franchise model. that if you're a deli, you can choose to be a Subway and serve their menu, or you can choose to be a Papa John's and serve their menu, or you can be a family-owned deli and serve your own menu. And they're all good delis, they're just different models. So what we are not trying to do is undermine or compete with any other program going on in the state. What we would really like to be able to do is provide resources to support you in your efforts. We think that Connect2Complete is a great model, and we're really hopeful to bring this to some of our campuses. All right, so the next several slides actually are pulled from the evaluation report that was done by Brandeis University. We don't have time today to go through all of these slides. If you look to the slide on retention, which button am I supposed to hit there? And you see the term-to-term retention. This item here in term 7 is really what gets people's attention. That when the folks start, if you compare them to a group of students that are not involved in Connect2Complete, you know, they're on the equal playing field, but then as they move forward over through time, by the time you get to term 7, there's a 6% greater likelihood that they're going to complete. And so that's something that we think is really worth investing in, and we think that as we begin to change campus culture and the communication, that over time we will see this number go even higher. And again, these are based on the 3-year pilot at the 9 campuses that participated, and you'll see at the bottom that the data was provided by 5 out of the 9. So going past all of this evaluation information, if you want to discuss that one-on-one, I'm happy to do that. I do have a full evaluation report. If that is something that is of interest to you, go ahead and send me an email, and I can send that to you. But if we focus on the students themselves, and this will help campuses determine, do we have the right population or enough students in this population where we want to adopt this model. It is focused on low-income students, so economically disadvantaged, as well as developmental education students. Folks who are coming maybe on conditional enrollment, folks that score significantly below your median admission scores for ACT or grade points or something like that. But each campus kind of identifies that pool of students in their own way. So developmental education was the phrase used at the beginning of this pilot. We know that's not necessarily true for all of our campuses moving forward. Connect2Complete is a course-based model. So this is the additional piece of this. This is not a program that students would opt into or out of. This is something that a campus decides this will be an element of the courses we have designated. So every student in the course will be a C2C student. Within that course, they will have the service learning component as well as the peer advocacy component. Each of these courses has at least one peer advocate. The ratio is typically 1 peer advocate to 15 C2C students. The peer advocates are upper class members who fall within the same demographic group as the students in the class. So they understand what it's like perhaps to be a working parent going to class, to be a first-generation college student that doesn't have the family support system to help them navigate this new environment of a campus. So they are someone that the students would be able to relate with really well as having successfully navigated this, and that they are on course to graduation as well. The theory of change model for Connect2Complete is fairly simple, but I think really meaningful. So if we start with the 2 elements within the Connect2Complete classroom and what the ultimate goals are, we're looking at mediating the relationships to student success, helping students build connections so they have someone to talk to, they know where to go for help, they feel like they belong in an environment, they see the campus environment as their home of sorts, they feel like they belong there, and they're developing that civic consciousness. So their education becomes about more than, quote unquote, just getting their certificate or their degree, but it becomes part of who they are and developing themselves as individuals and citizens. And then in the last column, the outcomes that we focus on through the student, faculty, and peer advocate engagement is that we look at the student outcomes for increased persistence and graduation, also moving the Connect2Complete students into future peer advocate roles. So we're seeing leadership development there as well as their civic skills. For the faculty, this provides deeper engagement with the students, and in the Brandeis evaluation really showed that the faculty enjoyed teaching more, and once they embraced service learning, they really saw the pedagogy as something that was important to them and meaningful for them in their ability to be teachers and to lead their classrooms. And then the peer advocates was the biggest surprise in the evaluation, because at first they didn't really think about what an impact this would make in the peer advocates' life themselves. They thought, oh yes, we'll give these students a job and they'll be very helpful. But their level of self-esteem, their sense of their self as a leader, and the impact on their own levels of persistence was something that was really important as well. So we really see this as a triple win across the board, that we're supporting the students, we're helping faculty feel more successful and more engaged, and then we're also providing leadership opportunities for the peer advocates. So the Connect2Complete model itself has 7 essential commitments. And this is where, for those of you that already have existing programs on your campus, you just might want to do little check marks in the column to see what you're already doing and what are some additional pieces that we might be able to help you build in if you're interested. So the first essential commitment is really the target demographic, that this program is designed for low-income students enrolled in at least one course that is designed for underprepared student success. So on your campus, you would need to have at least one faculty member who was excited about or amenable to building this into their particular course. You could do it with one course, you could do it with 4 courses, you could do it with as many courses as you feel is appropriate on your campus. But it has to be at least one course. Within that course, they would have to commit both to the engagement of peer advocacy as well as service learning. So that means perhaps some revisions to the syllabus for the class. It means embracing the peer advocate as a partner in the classroom, as a partner in learning and supporting, really a colleague in that classroom. Establishing a system for faculty training and professional development around service learning. So the faculty member or members who are committed to Connect2Complete will just want to make sure they have a really good understanding of the range of opportunities within service learning and civic engagement, and we help support them in selecting the most appropriate projects that are in line with their student learning goals and outcomes for their classroom. So we'll work with them. We will provide some orientation and training through Michigan Campus Compact. Many of your campuses already have that available through your Centers for Teaching and Learning, but we are certainly willing to work with you on that. But we will need to make sure that any faculty member who participates has been oriented in this method of teaching. We also need to make sure that this is a program where we can keep in touch with the students beyond just that first semester or term of their course. So for the Connect2Complete classroom, if a student comes into, I'm just going to say, Welcome to Campus 101, and that's their class and there are peer advocates in that classroom, at the end of that term, we don't want to lose track of their students. We want to make sure we build long-term relationships with them. So beyond that first course, we need to think about, what does this look like on your campus? Will there be study groups? Will there be monthly meetings of the C2C cohort? How will we continue to connect with these students? Will the peer advocates have a goal of 3 personal meetings with each of their initial C2C students over the course of their second term or their second and third term? We'll work that out for your campus based on your student body and the systems that you have. Again, looking at the original 9 community colleges and looking at their resources through the National Campus Compact website, you'll get an idea of the variety of options that you have to implement this on your campus. Number 5 is providing the peer advocacy and service learning training for the peer advocates. There is a model developed for that, a really nice training model, and that is something that MiCC also will help to coordinate. If we pursue the AmeriCorps grant that we'll talk about in a few minutes, this would be something that would be built into our AmeriCorps member training and ongoing support. So there is, the model there. It's just a matter of how we implement it. Number 6 is a really big differentiation between Connect2Complete and other programs. The role of the peer advocate within Connect2Complete is not a volunteer role. This is something where the student is seen as a staff member of sorts or is somehow compensated and elevated beyond the volunteer status, which we think is really important in the eyes of the students that they're supporting. So if they are AmeriCorps members, they are seen as leaders and mentors and supporters. Some campuses have opted not to pursue a national service role, and they have allocated federal work study positions for the peer advocate, so they are student staff on campus. Other campuses have scholarships that are available or other stipends. And then one other model that we've seen is that actually a leadership or a course credit was developed for the peer advocate. So they didn't get a financial compensation, but they did get credit that counted toward their graduation. So there has to be some level of incentive or compensation for the peer advocates. And then the last element is that there needs to be a campus staff member who's responsible for program coordination. That would be someone that would work really closely with, in our state, the Michigan Campus Compact staff that would help us troubleshoot, that would allow us to support and advance the program going forward. So there would need to be a touch point person on each campus in order to move this forward. All right, I'm wondering if we could just pause a minute and see if anybody has questions. So far I know I went through a lot of information really quickly about the model. Mel, how should they do this with questions? Do you want it in the chat box or can they raise their hand?
Some of you have been asking questions via the question box, and that's helpful, and we can respond to those. And others, if you want to raise your hand, if you want to speak on the phone, we can call on you and unmute you. So whatever works for those of you that are out there. We're just pausing for a second to see if we're missing any questions here. We would welcome you to ask questions.
If there are none, I'll just keep talking. Okay, so I'm going to continue, and then obviously we have folks monitoring the chat box and the questions if you have more, if thoughts pop up as we go. All right, so one of the things that Michigan Campus Compact is interested in, and we spoke with a few of you about this a year ago, but we just, as a network, we were not ready yet, is that we would like to pursue an AmeriCorps application that would support Connect2Complete. So I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts about that moving forward. I will say that the intent to apply is due September 15th. And we set our second conference call before we had that timeline. So our next conference call or webinar about this is not until September 16th. So we'll need to do some individual follow-up with some of these other campuses. But we will need to know generally about a week before that, September 10th maybe, if your campus is interested in pursuing the AmeriCorps application in partnership with MiCC. We would serve as the core applicant, but we need to be able to list our host sites, at least our targeted host sites, the number of AmeriCorps members we'll be seeking, and so forth moving forward. And we need to submit that no later than 5 p.m. on September 15th. So the tricky part of this is that I am actually out of the office September 7th through 11th. So while you can still be sending me emails about your interest during that week, and I will break my vow to my friends that I'm vacationing with, and I will occasionally check my email. They will obviously, they'll never know. That if you have any significant questions or need serious conversations about this, I would ask you to reach out to me no later than next Friday so that we can get something scheduled. I know the timing of this is glitchy, but my life tends to just kind of roll that way. So that aside, back to AmeriCorps. There are several different focus areas within AmeriCorps that they like to see the program's impact. There are two specific focus areas or priorities that we think this program addresses. One, obviously, is education. We're promoting education for a number of students, educational success, for a really a targeted group of students that are in need of additional support. The second priority area is that of economic opportunity. As we look at the brain drain from Michigan and the decrease in individual earnings, we really believe that a college degree or certificate is the path to additional economic opportunity. So for students generally, but then also again for the peer advocates who are seeing themselves in more of a leadership role and are setting higher goals and aspirations for themselves. You will see the timeline here on this slide, and I'm not going to read this to you, but if you commit to participating in this first year in our pilot launch, these are dates that you will need to have on your calendar so that you know when I'll be bugging you for information. The ratio of how we will pursue the AmeriCorps members is they are allocated in full-time equivalents. And I've gone back into the Connect2Complete models and the average number of hours for peer advocates and that kind of thing. And roughly, if this makes sense over the phone, a minimum time AmeriCorps member, which is 450 hours, would be assigned to one group of 15 students. So if your class size is about 15 students, absolutely no more than 20, you might have one peer advocate assigned to that classroom, and they would be a quarter-time AmeriCorps member. If you had more than 20 students, you could have a half-time AmeriCorps member, or you could have 2 quarter-time AmeriCorps members. But we really need to stick to that ratio of roughly 1 quarter-time AmeriCorps member, which would be the peer advocate, to about 15 Connect2Complete students. So we'll do all the individual math on your campuses. And we'll talk about what type of roles you might like. If they are the quarter-time AmeriCorps members, they would be eligible for both a living allowance of roughly, and everything's really rough right now, roughly $3,000 for the year, and then they would complete with an education award of roughly $1,527. So what that looks like for the members is their living allowance is sent to them on a regular basis, so they would have that ongoing source of income. Their education award, they would be eligible for that once they had successfully completed their full year of service. We currently do not have additional funding to support this program on campus. This is something that every state has looked at different models, so we don't have a grant to give to a campus at this time to support this work. What we have is the technical assistance and the capacity building and the ability to leverage additional resources like the AmeriCorps members to provide the support back on your campus. With AmeriCorps members, there will be a cost share, and again, we're still working out the numbers here, but based on our current AmeriCorps programming within Michigan Nonprofit Association, it would be roughly $1,200 per quarter-time member. And again, that's just a ballpark. We will work through more of these details in the next couple weeks to be able to solidify with you. But that $1,200 would come back to Michigan Campus Compact and M&A to support the ongoing training and support, orientation, resource development, all of that kind of thing. So that $1,200, again, would be leveraging the resources of your AmeriCorps members. That would be roughly about a $4,500 benefit to them, plus the additional support here from the MiCC staff. So we do know that is a factor with many of our campuses. But given that we're talking now about costs that would be in your next fiscal year budget, we're hopeful that this is something that you see the value of, and we can help you negotiate how to make that happen. In the future, if this program really takes hold in Michigan, we can envision potentially pursuing an outside funder who might want to invest in an expansion of this program or do some more resource development, but not having the foundation in Michigan currently and knowing the competitive nature of just funding generally, we don't feel like we have the good solid ask right yet. Once we have a number of campuses that have committed and said yes, they're interested, and we can put down a number of students that will be impacted, that gives us a much more solid case to pursue additional funding. Okay. So the AmeriCorps component is one piece of this, and we know it's a critical piece in looking at how we support the students, the peer advocates. And again, I want to emphasize to you, if you feel like AmeriCorps is not the way for you to support your peer advocates, that's okay. If you still would like to participate in Connect2Complete and you would rather use work-study funds to create positions within your campus, that's fine. If you have access to other resources or models, that's okay too. But there just has to be some mechanism for providing support and incentives for those peer advocates. When MCC is looking to work with your campus as a partner in Connect2Complete, we really want to emphasize that this is a team-based program and that we are looking to work to support all members of your team. So the first person that we would communicate most directly with would be your identified director or coordinator of the program. This might be someone already on your campus that has a position, and this can be built in because it has similar job functions. You may provide release time for one of your faculty members who will be participating, that they can take on some extra jobs of coordinating the program and serving as the connection to MCC. But you will designate that person. You will tell us who that is. The second level of your team are the developmental education or college success faculty members who are participating. Third, you may have other staff or administrators that are supporting the institutionalization of this program. This is not something that we envision doing 1 year, maybe 3 years, probably longer. So we're really looking at building this in as a long-term component of Michigan Campus Compact work and a sustainable activity on member campuses that really support student success. The peer advocates are someone who may transition on a year-to-year basis. You may have peer advocates that serve for 2 or 3 years, but those will be the students engaged. We will work with them. And then also the Connect2Complete students themselves in the classroom, so that the personal development for them is really important. One of the things I got really excited about was that in I think it was one of the Florida campuses that were in the pilot, at the end of the year, they invited the Connect2Complete students to a breakfast with the president and other administrators of the campus to really talk to them about what their experience had been as first-generation college students, what ideas they had, and the students just valued that so much that they felt they had a voice that was important and they had something to contribute back to their campus. So beyond just having the service learning and the engagement in the classroom, there are opportunities to think about how are we cultivating the leadership potential of these Connect2Complete students as well, both on campus and then as they move forward in their lives. MCC, again, will serve as a liaison with National Campus Compact. We will continue to work with other states that are implementing Connect2Complete to see what we can glean and bring back to Michigan. We are working, again, with our members. As I mentioned, we had 19 campuses so far. Show some interest in this model. We also have a number of non-member campuses who have programs on their campus that they're considering switching over to the Connect2Complete model. Once we have our campuses identified, we want you to know you're not doing this alone. We have resources from other states where we will come, and I'm just going to say Lansing Community College because they're right down the street. If Lansing Community College commits to this, we will come to their campus and we will walk them through the process on how do they evaluate their readiness, do they need help building their team, can we help them with their planning for the year. We don't need to insert ourselves if not needed, but we are ready to provide support to the campuses. And then again, to provide the ongoing training and technical assistance to boost your infrastructure and sustainability, and also support the students and the peer advocates as they become successful in their role. All right, so to summarize, if you think you would like to be a pilot campus, which means you would launch this on your campus in fall 2016 with at least one course, with an intent to implement the program for 3 years minimum. That's really what we're looking for, the pilot campus. You need to be able to commit to the 7 essential commitments that we started, or that we stated. Sorry, it's Friday afternoon. And then you will commit to participate in the campus readiness activities that we talked about, the orientations, the planning, all that kind of thing. We will support you in your recruitment and training of peer advocates. Again, the model is available. If you participate in the AmeriCorps program, obviously that will be something that's built in. And then really, if you're choosing not to participate in the AmeriCorps program, identify and commit the resources to compensate the peer advocates. So we know this is a conversation that needs to go broader on your campus than just this 1-hour webinar today. But again, we are on somewhat of a short timeline for the AmeriCorps application, so we're going to ask you to move quickly if you can, but at the very least, send me an email and let me know what your timeline looks like, and we can schedule a call so that we can support you moving forward. Generally, we talked about the AmeriCorps application. We're looking at the orientation really to happen late fall, early winter if you're committed, the planning in the winter. Recruitment of peer advocates will have to happen in spring and summer. This could be just a little bit glitchy related to AmeriCorps because of the approval timeline with AmeriCorps. So we're going to have systems, and MiCC will own that and will work with you on that. We will have to have systems that are ready to drop and run in the spring as soon as we hear about AmeriCorps. And if, in the event, I mean, there's always a possibility that our AmeriCorps application would not be funded, we would have to have our plan B for how we would support the peer advocates moving forward. So in a way, we're kind of asking you to go on a grand adventure with us and take a little bit of a risk. We think that this is something that really we can make a solid case for, and that I think on your campus you can see the benefit as well. But it's something we're going to have to co-create in partnership with our members and participants. All right, so now we're going to try doing the questions again. If anybody says right now, yes, you're ready to commit to Connect2Complete, you will be my personal hero. But I know that's probably not realistic. I'm sure you're all as excited as I am. But really would like to think about how can Connect2Complete enhance your existing campus efforts, or if it's a program that you have to start from scratch. If you have ideas about what elements are appealing, what you see as barriers, all of that feedback will help us as we continue to develop this concept. So I'm going to let Mel take it over and give you instructions about answering those questions or asking things.
Sure. So just like we were saying, it's probably easiest to raise your hand and we can unmute you. You can ask the question aloud, or we can take questions through the chat box, which I believe we have gotten a few in. Let me just take a second to read this, and others, please raise your hand or type into the question or chat boxes.
I can't read that far, I'm going blind.
So there's a question, we were hoping there was some national funding that we could tap into. Is that not the case? How about a bridge grant from the Bill Gates Foundation?
Okay. At this point, we do not have any outside additional funds. We can certainly look at the bridge grant. Any of the grant applications that we choose to pursue, we pursue in partnership with the Michigan Nonprofit Association, so we just need to sit down with them with our concepts and look at funding timelines and all that kind of thing. So we are definitely open to that. We are also open to, I mean, we've talked about Kresge, we've talked about Lumina, we've talked about looking at corporate support. We think there are lots of opportunities, but we have to develop what our model looks like in Michigan first, so that we have a case to take back out to potential funders. So that's definitely on the horizon, but it's not in place for this pilot launch in fall 2016. And again, I will say, this is our pilot launch. We were hoping for, again, the 5 to 10 campuses. it would be beautiful if within 5 or 7 years we had 20 campuses in Michigan doing this. So we might have additional resources at that point in time. But right now we're looking for the early adopters who can help us really define this and grow it and build that case for future support.
Thank you so much for that question. I think this format is working out well. Again, we would really welcome your questions at this time. So if you'd like to raise your hand, we can unmute you, or you can ask it again through either of the chat or question boxes. I'm just perusing to make sure that we don't have any unanswered questions here. But please feel free to ask questions. No question is a silly question. We're trying to work through this together.
I did such a great job. There's absolutely no question whatsoever. This is fabulous. Oh wait, I'm not that great. There is one.
What incentive ideas might get buy-in from faculty?
Huh. That's a really good question. So I'm not trying to skirt the question, but I will say it depends. We have found that the faculty culture on campuses are so different from campus to campus. So for some faculty, there might be some level of recognition that they get to help design a new program. In some faculty, in some campuses, this type of work is tied to tenure and promotion. Sometimes there are awards. Sometimes, I like to think that the altruistic, oh, I'm helping my students be more successful is plenty, but I know that's not always the case. So this is something I think that, again, if you have the opportunity to look at the 9 campuses that participated and just see what their model looked like, that might spark your ideas more about what culture seems to be most in line with your campus. So sorry, I can't give you the magic bullet because it's just different for every single campus. The other piece of this too, though, thank you for that question, that kind of sparked it, is that in a lot of ways we see the pilot participants as a learning community within Michigan Campus Compact. And so this is something where you could really be asking your peers in the cohort those type of questions and co-creating some answers. So this is something we're going to learn as we move forward.
So somebody stated that they feel like they have a lot of the pieces in place, but without additional funding, they're not sure that they would try to follow the exact model.
Okay, well, that is very much an option, but it's, again, go back to my subway analogy. If we don't have all 7 of the elements, it won't be part of the Connect2Complete model, the AmeriCorps application, and those kind of things. So again, we will be building a component of our website that will have the Connect2Complete resources and materials, and most of them are already out there through the National Campus Compact. So we are certainly willing to help provide you with resources to continue in the work that you're already doing, but our focus right now is on developing the holistic Connect2Complete program. Okay, we have another question about examples of service learning that has occurred in this program. Again, I would need to go back and look at the individual classes that participated. I've been focused really on the administration and not the ground implementation at this point, because I think it will evolve. But I think it's pretty common that when students are coming into some of these classes, if they've got an English class or a math class or whatever their freshman year experience class is, there are specific learning goals for that classroom. So it might they might be going out and doing a one-day project with a nonprofit and then coming back and writing up a brochure for that nonprofit. They might be going out, if they're really focused on relationship building or leadership. Maybe they'll go volunteer with a local youth organization. You know, I think the opportunities are endless. And I want to just ask Mel a question. Do we capture all of these questions? Does this thing allow us to print out the questions later? Okay, so we will try to print out the questions, and for those of you that are asking really specific examples, we will follow up with you. And again, not to push the buck or pass the buck on this, but I will say that within the Connect2Complete resource guide that's within the National Campus Compact website, you will find answers to virtually all of these questions.
Those are great questions, yes. Any others?
You're all making me earn my paycheck.
Those were all through the question function. We're happy to, again, take them that way, or we can unmute you. We're happy to hear your voices. But let us know if you have a question. Doesn't look like we have any last thoughts or questions right now.
All right, so on this last slide here, you have my email address. You can contact me specifically with questions. You can call me. Email is usually easier because it follows me everywhere I go. And then the Campus Compact, the link to that website if you want to go look at more of this information. I want to thank you for making time on a Friday afternoon to entertain this conversation and to think about this program. One of the things that MCC we're really looking for also is feedback from you on what services are beneficial. We know money is always the goal, and we can't always provide the money, but we can provide the support. And we really value your feedback on what's the best investment of our time and resources as far as trying to support you, and you know what you need on your campus to be successful. So continue to send us emails and chat with us. Look for updates on our Facebook page as well. And we will continue to talk about this through our network meetings this fall and other events that we have throughout this year. That's it. We're good. No more questions posted. Okay. Thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and a great weekend and a really successful start to the school year. Have a great day.